Fahad is a partner at KeyData. So Fahad actually quite many people know him, and Fahad is an industry leader specialized in identity and access management. And he has over 15 years experience providing the thought leadership, consulting practice, services to large organizations, both in US and also in Canada. And before joining KeyData, Fahad was the associate partner at Ernst & Young and led the national IAM practice. Fahad's topic for tonight is because IAM is one important element about the overall cloud controls. So his topic is solving IAM in the cloud.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Brian, for the kind introduction. And I'm happy to be here again. I was here, I guess, in one of your sessions just a few months ago. So happy to be here. Thanks. And as Brian was mentioning, I'm a partner at KeyData. I've been working in this IAM space and cybersecurity, and more specifically, identity and access management for over 15 years. That's all I focus on: identity and access management. And with organizations moving more and more into the cloud, of course, the discussion for identity extended in the cloud as well. So I wanted to bring in the thought leadership about how to manage identity and what are the areas I'm hearing from clients when it comes to identity and cloud. Before going into, so that's going to be my focus of the presentation. Rather than talking about overall security controls, I will have a more specialized focus on identity and access management in the cloud. And let me just make sure I can change the screen. Okay, so before I go into the presentation, I wanted to just spend a brief moment on KeyData. For those of you who don't know about KeyData, so that will give you more context about where I'm coming from. So KeyData Associates is a Canadian leader in identity and access management services. We offer full services from consulting and advisory, system integration, managed services, and so on, and across identity and access management for workforce identity, customer identity, privileged access management, regardless of it is on-prem or off-prem or different settings for customers. So that's our focus, and that's all we want, right? So, this topic of cloud, and as organizations are getting into more and more cloud adoption, it's constantly coming up in every discussion we have with our clients. So those are some of the lessons learned from our previous engagements, and also what we're seeing in the industry. I would like to bring those in front of you guys.
What's that called? Model.
I think there's a. Okay. So I am in the age of cloud, right? So we all know that organizations are going through major digital transformation right now, right? So every single organization is going through digital transformation, and adopting cloud is a key aspect of this digital transformation initiatives. But with this rapid increase of cloud adoption, organizations are also forced to think differently now, and they're forced to think more creatively about their security controls. And there are a lot of solutions are available out there, but that's creating some confusion for them as well. So the previous two leaders that shared their presentation, they have provided some excellent thought leadership for overall security posture management for cloud. So I won't spend any time on that. So what I do want to bring in is within the security landscape, one of the key challenges I'm seeing organizations are experiencing or trying to find answer on is what is the digital perimeter for identity? Because as the organizations are going more and more into the cloud, their digital boundary, as it used to be defined for an identity, it's not specified or not bounded within that on-prem environment anymore. It's extending into the cloud as they're going to IoT, mobile, cloud. It's a much more complex ecosystem right now. So if I try to simplify identity when it comes to cloud, there are two areas that I see organizations are trying to find an answer for. One is there is cloud-based IAM solutions. So identity and access management has come a long way, like over the last 15 years, I would say. There are some clear leaders in this space, some more mature products out there, but organizations are trying to understand now. And so as I move my applications into the cloud, as I move my data centers into the cloud, different use PaaS or IaaS, how do I manage the identities on those cloud hosted applications? Can I leverage this existing tools I had for on-prem, or do I have to buy a new tool? Or if I try to buy a new IAM tool, should I be buying an on-prem tool, or should I be buying a tool that is just only cloud, that only supports cloud? So there's a lot of questions that's coming to their mind. And I will be touching base on some of like what we're seeing in the industry and what are some guiding principles that you can follow, like when it comes to that. So I'll come back to that topic. And the other one is identity management of a cloud-hosted environment. So what that means is a cloud environment, there are users and resources. So there's that are leveraged for more of like administrative users and resources that that is specific to that cloud host. So there are other native solutions provided by the cloud environment, or there are other security tools that can manage those users and resources. But there is still one area and gap, and that the applications or platforms that are getting hosted in that cloud environment, what happens to those identities? Again, who has the responsibility for managing those identities, and what are some of the best practices for that? So that's another element that I'll be focusing on. So let me go to the next one. So the first topic, that the IAM solutions hosted in the cloud, right? So IAM solution providers, they are, as I was mentioning, that's it is a more mature product market environment now, but they're facing increasing demand by customers to support the cloud adoption as well. So the following are some of the key elements, I would say, like when you're picking an IAM solution. So these are things that you should look at or should consider to assess, like that is your IAM solution, like how should it be all cloud or should it be all on-prem? So one is the deployment model, right? So try to assess, like, should the solution be deployed in a hybrid model with on-prem, or how does it compare to just technologies that are just only on-prem, right? So the other one is integration capability, right? So if you pick a tool that is only cloud friendly, is that going to be able to extend and integrate with the applications and other identities that are in our on-prem environment? Because if you end up with you don't want to end up with multiple or different solutions, because then you're trying to, you will end up getting disjointed identity information. So the principle is to try to have one centralized view of who has access to what. So keeping that principle in mind, try to find a solution that gives you that end-to-end visibility of an identity solution. Data residency is another topic that is, if there is a data residency or privacy requirements, is that going to be a concern, or how you can manage that? Most of the IAM solutions, the leading solutions, they have creative solutions around this now. So it's becoming a less, depending on the organizations, but they have some creative solutions now that can meet that requirement. But my suggestion would be to just not get blindsided and just keep that in your consideration as well. Scalability is a big benefit, of course, that if you host your solutions in the cloud, you will have that on-demand scalability benefit of a cloud solution, and also the cost savings. So when you're hosting something in the cloud, like IAM solution, that what are the cost savings for you in the long run. So that's something to consider as well. So these are the some topics I would say that you should consider when you're picking a solution, identity management solution, either to be hosted in the cloud or cloud-based or on-prem based. Now, the second topic, it's kind of connected to the first one I was talking about, is so if you look at this is a nice pictorial view published by Microsoft, actually. It's that if you have like a SaaS, PaaS, IaaS, or on-prem, right? So think about the blue boxes, depending on which column you're in, or which type of environment you have, the responsibilities for customer varies as well. So having a clear view of that is going to be very critical when you try to make a decision or understand that where does the responsibility for identity lie, right? So for example, cloud providers can provide centralized management of resources and reusers that have administrative privileges for managing the cloud environment, or there are other CSP solutions that that can complement that. But if you have in a IaaS environment, like if you are hosting multiple Windows servers and you're deploying different applications in those servers, the identities of those applications or those or the even the privileged identities in those servers, those are not going to be managed by the native tools or technologies. It's those application-specific identities you would still want to have a mature solution or centralized solution in your organization that has visibility to that. So I'll just pick an example. For example, I'm just giving one example. Like say SailPoint is one of the leader, like we all know that that's one of the leader in the identity governance and administration space. They have like matured as well to and will be able to provide that visibility of identity for on-prem, and even if you have applications that are being hosted in the cloud and be extended, that security controls, that IAM solution controls can be extended to manage the identities hosted in the cloud as well. So just trying to be cognizant of that what cloud providers can offer and what they cannot offer would be a key factor as you try to build out your IAM solutions or IAM programs. And the next one, I want to just cover this is for those of you who are familiar with identity and access management, and or others like who are not familiar with it. I'll just cover it quickly. That the security fundamentals, like it's regardless of when you're what type of solution you're trying to pick to manage your identity, it's the security fundamentals should remain consistent. So on the left side, we have IAM lifecycle, which indicates that workforce or customer identity lifecycle, and the right side, the PAM lifecycle, refers to the privileged account management lifecycle. So mostly the non-human accounts, the privileged accounts lifecycle. So each one of those has a very well-defined lifecycle processes. So these are like these have been developed like over the years from various lessons learned, and now these are pretty well-defined processes now. Like so, for example, in the IAM lifecycle, if a new employee joins, there needs to be a way to have like you have to create an identity like for that your new employee in your environment. There has to be a way of doing identity registration and onboarding. There will be a process. Needs to be an access request process, and when the access is requested, that employee might request access to on-prem solutions or even some applications that are hosted in the cloud. So and when the request is created, there needs to be a fulfillment of those requests as well. And then there's the access usage that you have to be able to monitor. And there needs to be some periodic review, but for different regulatory controls and requirements that you have to do. And when the employee leaves or changes job, there needs to be a process to remove that identity or associated accounts as well. So if you just keep these fundamental processes in mind, you have to look at, like, if you're considering cloud or some identity, some of these processes will be touching your cloud perimeter or cloud environment. Which tool you have in your arsenal that can actually meet these requirements, right? So that's something. So it's keeping the security fundamental and the IAM or PAM lifecycle processes in mind. I would suggest to build out your IAM program or IAM solutions. Then the next one, I just want to do a double-click version of it. It's so now if we kind of simplify those life cycles into governance, processes, and technical controls, what do we see with organizations more and more, right? So what we see usually that the existing policy and guidance you have, the different roles and accountabilities within an organization, we usually see that, like, based on various IAM and PAM cloud assessments we have done, the governance of foundational guiding principles stays more or less the same, because those are the guiding principles that organization has to meet. Like, the requirement should not change because you're extending things to into cloud. However, when you go to the documented processes, that's where some variations will come, because the processes of provisioning something in the cloud might be a bit different and will be in different in most cases, but that is being like acknowledging that and documenting those early on would be key, like to understand what is the process for identity provisioning in the cloud versus identity provisioning in on-prem, but and do you have full visibility to like even remove that, like when that identity is not in use anymore. Where we see the more the gaps, the control gaps perspective, that mature technical controls, and there is the on-prem controls, the implementation controls would be a bit different from cloud, but different in the sense of, like, as I was explaining, it's going to be, when it comes to the cloud, it's going to be a shared controls. Some of the controls would be met by your the matured IAM products out there in the market, but there are other controls you should be cognizant about. Those are the users and resources native to the cloud environment. So there are other non-IAM tools and technologies, or the native cloud will provide you some mechanism to manage those, right? It's, and perfect example is like a Trend Micro was giving an example. So like I said, their solution would be perfect for the users and resources in the cloud environment, but there's application-specific identities and so on. That's where your matured IAM products, traditional products that have evolved over time as well, will be your best bet. The last one I want to just emphasize quickly on, not emphasize, like I just want to share an example like that we have done recently for an identity access management and privileged account management cloud control assessment for one of the federal government entity. And what is the process that we took? And the reason I'm sharing this is, like, if as you try to get ready for IAM in the cloud, and or try to assess your IAM, what controls you need, you can potentially follow this similar approach. So what we did is we first looked at all the lifecycle, again, going back to the foundational governance, right? So what are the IAM lifecycle processes? What are the PAM lifecycle processes? What are the on-prem roles developed previously with, like I said, can they be extended, or should you have some different roles defined as things are getting extended to the cloud? And understanding those processes and seeing if there's any gaps, and then also we also try to map it back to the different required regulatory requirements or controls that are out there to see if there is any gaps against those controls. And then what we did is, like, ultimately we outlined any gaps that are not met by the native cloud environment, and which ones could be leveraged by extending that enterprise PAM or IAM or MFA or NDM solutions. So that is the approach we took. So taking it from the governance and processes perspective and then going down to the controls perspective.